Welcome to the Red Pill Diaries. So, today, oh, perfect, an area that you can get into easily. Alright, it's always hard finding something that his little short legs can get him into without having to dig his way out of, try to jump out of with great difficulty because he's so old he can't jump like he used to. Alright, yeah, so we get to the point. So today's one is about, episode is about kind of the two most likely reasons that we can't access our full brain power. So the two most logical hypotheses I can come up with are, look too close, alright, are first of all that we were maybe backwards engineered. So if you imagine human beings that had their full brain power, and for that, in that same token, their full physical strength, because we are abnormally weak in the animal kingdom, like uniquely weak, except for maybe some mollusks and things that can hardly move. We are very, very weak creatures. Like I think rhesus monkeys probably got the same strength as us, and it's about a tenth the size, you know. The gibbons and stuff like that, they're way stronger than we are. That's not just because they string through trees. I'm sure it's partially to do with diet and stuff as well, but maybe it's to do with engineering. Yeah, I've got a horrible feeling this video is being shot upside down. Anyway, we'll see. Because it's showing the meter at the top of the screen instead of the bottom. Alright, anyway, so if you think about it, why would we have this mental power if it wasn't required? And the only two reasons I can think of is, one is that we had a great amount of mental power and we lost it over time for reasons such as what's in our food, or we've been engineered to be this way. Maybe there is a coexisting type of human that can access and do things like have full psychic ability and whatever other abilities we have. In an episode quite a while ago I mentioned about the multiple dimension theory, and not to be confused with something of pretty much the same name, which would be where you basically have infinite dimensions within effectively right next to our reality, or in the same space as our reality, the different dimensions, right? Not to be confused with that. That dimension theory I came up with was that you had a negative time dimension. And this is how you can have retrocausality, things like the Mandela effect. You can have a constant time dimension. We can only tap into, and most of us can only tap into, positive time, positive space, positive. Well, maybe energies, like positive and negative, also flow in their own kind of dimensional conduit. But anyway, so as part of that, tapping into the global psyche. So for example, remote viewing, something I was just watching again this morning, but I've seen it quite a few years ago, but the CIA looking into remote viewing, so it's a fact. It's a human ability that does exist, where we can visualize things that are in the real world without having been there. We can visualize things in other people's minds. Oh, he's caught a decent size carp there. You can see it flapping around in the bucket. So basically, the reason I came up with this is because I was having a conversation this morning about it. Like, how could we end up being the way we are, so weak and so mentally weak? Well, most of us especially so mentally weak, but even those of us that are not so blue-pilled or striving to learn the truth in life, we're still mentally weak compared to what we could be. You only have to look at people who are autistic who can untap certain aspects of human intelligence, not others, not their social intelligence, maybe not, but they can untap their mathematical intelligence, for example. So it's almost like you were to have a product, for example, that's a really good product, and then what you do is you basically make the paint thinner or make the circuit boards weaker. Actually, as a good example, the Nokia phones. I remember my friend showed me his Nokia phone when I used to work for Vodafone years ago, and it had a different circuit board inside it, the one that was made in China, and he was telling me about the different production lines they have. So the cheapest one would have all Chinese employees and all Chinese managers. The next one would have all Chinese employees and some managers would be English speaking, and then in the top quality ones would have all these managers and sub managers, whatever, from Germany, and the higher end qualified Chinese engineers working in them, right? And they had 3 grades of phone, but they're effectively the exact same design. One's just made weaker. The same thing happens if you look maybe at OEM, original equipment manufacturing, where you get Volkswagen making Skoda, and they might make it a little bit cheaper here and there because the cars are going to be cheaper, right? But you're effectively still buying a Volkswagen. Same kind of thing. So if we lived in sorry for the coughing, I've had this I don't know what it is, this cough thing. It could be coronavirus, I don't know, I don't care. The whole world's going to get it if it does exist, so there's no difference anyway. But yeah, to get back to the point, imagine back in the time when we didn't have the same legal structures that we have now, that have obviously been implemented over time to assist the parasite class, to vindicate them from their crimes, and to also ensnare the rest of us. If the system has a problem with you, it can just basically delete your existence, or effectively delete your existence by ensnaring you in a bunch of legal loopholes that have been designed to allow them to come after you no matter what you have or haven't done, right? So in this past time, if that didn't exist, then DNA research might not exist. I mean, might be DNA restrictions, scientific restrictions might not have existed either, or wouldn't have existed. Actually, unlikely to have, even if we had that kind of technology in a previous civilizations, right? So, in that case, what you might be able to do is take a human being, so rather than redesign something using, genetic engineering from scratch, it would make a lot more sense to backwards design something. In other words, take the human DNA and remove stuff from it. So if you want to make a subservient class, rather than taking a pig or a dog and making it better so it could serve you, rather take a human being and remove the stuff that's not required, or suppress the things that are not required to serve you. So for example, you don't want your slaves to be as strong as you, because then they're a threat. You don't want the slaves to have to be able to tap into the ether and see things that are going on, or have full visibility of what there is in this realm or universe or whatever the hell it is we're living in. Because I have no idea, and neither does anyone else, especially those who tell you they're sure of what it is, and they know, and that it's definitely a flat earth, or it's definitely a fucking simulation, right? No smart person would do that, as I said in the previous video. Right, so that could be one reason. So we're effectively reverse engineered, purposely weakened, purposely detuned version of a human being. And the other one could be that we attained a certain level. So over time, let's say if evolution theory is correct, for example, then the reason why we evolved with a larger brain was to utilize all these things. And then some event or some series of events, for example, the world being completely controlled by a minority of people who want to keep everyone else in check, have slowly removed abilities from the mainstream society. Those, if you look at that whole conundrum of why we're so physically weak and why we're so mentally weak in comparison to what we should be, and not just mentally weak, why we clearly don't have the ability to tap into senses that we we most likely had, but also still do have, if you're not like TED Talks and, you know, you're going to shut down any discussion about psychic ability, even though they have scientifically proven it to be true at the CIA. Well, unless they're completely lying, of course. But then, you know, I'm sure enough of us out there have seen ourselves cases that are too freaky to be true. I had my own little incident when I was studying, when I was a student, that we did a Ouija board thing. Not that I wouldn't do any of this weird stuff nowadays, because that is a little bit, I don't know, it creeps me out now. And basically, this thing told me when I was going to die, and it kind of led me to doing a lot of crazy things in my life that I wouldn't have done otherwise, so it was kind of a good thing. And I woke up when I was 23, like, hang on, I'm not dead. God, I could have killed myself. I could have died with some of the things I've done. But, so it kind of drove me to do things and get out of my shell, which was a good thing. But at the same time, it also, no one in this room knew my family from South Africa. And I asked this, whatever the thing that we were asking in the Ouija board, about what was the name of my auntie that died, and it started to write GLA, and it was really freaky. I remember we put Vaseline on top of the shot glass too, because we were all like, oh, you're moving it, you know. But there was no one in that room except for me who knew that, and I know I wasn't pushing it. So, and also I couldn't because it had a Vaseline on top of it. So that was kind of weird. So, so I'm saying I've seen for myself some of these things. Like I've also seen for myself a bunch of us on a mountaintop in New Zealand, well, on a mountainside. Two of us had guns, two of us had binoculars, and we all seen a UFO. It's just there's four of us there. You know, it's not like well, maybe all four of you didn't know what you seen. Just, you know, we can all describe it perfectly the same. The movement, the way it looked, and everything. And it wasn't like the other one that I put in the video in my other channel, the Tic Tac one that was moving really fast, the one in Fox Glacier in New Zealand. This is more like of a swish shape with sharp edges, like a kind of roundy boomerang shape, and mirror kind of finish, like mirrors and like chrome steel look. Anyway, that's besides the point. So what I mean is, there are some things that we've all seen. We often quickly ignore them. Like a few years goes by and you almost forget that amazing thing that almost it knocked you for six at the time. You were like, what the fuck, I'm never going to forget this. And then a few months later you kind of forget it. You carry on with your life. So I think it's clear that we definitely had more abilities in some areas at certain times. We might even have more abilities in some respects, just in the same way, when you dull your senses, it accentuates the senses that you still have. So if you become deaf, you should get better at maybe smelling or seeing, right? Well, if we have been dumbed down so much on purpose, so let's say if it wasn't the reverse engineering where we have been effectively detuned, if it was the other way around, that we've effectively lost senses that we had through either indoctrination by the powers that be that are socially engineering us, or just through random devolvement, however that maybe took place, right? It should also mean that we maybe honed our senses in other areas. I can't quite think of examples there, so therefore that is like one strike against that hypothesis as far as being potentially valid. So then, yeah, even more weight towards the basically we've been put here as a slave race, backwards engineered and detuned to serve something else. And if you look at some of the other things I've come up with and others have come up with, that we're effectively all slaves, just different grades of slaves. So like before Jim Crow and all that in America, the grade of African American slave was a lower grade slave than the average peasant, or so let's say the average. You had Scots and Irish that were slaves, but you also had Scots and Irish that were indentured they had indentured servitude, so that's like one level above the slave level that the Scots and Irish slaves and African slaves were, right? And everyone else thinking that they're free men, even probably some of the middle class who don't realize they're just serving a function for some greater elite. Anyway, I just wanted to speak about that one there, to bring the reason why I thought I'd bring that one up is you know, why are we not asking the question why we're so physically and mentally and spiritually weak in general, the whole human race? No one's asking that question. It should be quite an obvious question to be asking. It should be, I mean, this should be one like, oh, hang on, let's just before we even bother trying to synthesize a new life form, let's figure out what the fuck consciousness is. Let's figure out why our systems are so weak. Maybe if we did things that way around, it would solve the other problems. The thing about genetic engineering, the thing about being outlawed, one of the theories I had a while ago, if you know, let's say you could trust people and there'd be no because there's always an agenda to weaponize everything that we come up with, right? The military always take control of all technology that any country comes up with, right? But if it wasn't like that, and we realized that our purpose in this world was actually, as human beings, completely irrelevant, then it would mean that the only thing that's important is life itself. Life as we know it here, a carbon-based life form, organizes its molecules in a certain way, or cells in a certain way, or has cells to begin with. Maybe that is unique to our planet. It could be. Even if there's billions of planets and billions of solar systems, it could still be unique. We could have silicon-based life forms or whatever it is elsewhere, or even things that don't have a physical entity behind that life form, right? I'll sit here for a while. So, little boy off his lead. Yeah, so in that case, if we were, so let's take the moral aspects away from it and any religious aspects that people might have, exceptions that people might have to this topic. But the most logical thing to do, if it's all about life and it's not about human beings, if human beings are not uniquely important in this world, and it's life that's important, then the most logical thing that we could do is make the most intelligent beings that we could, not through artificial intelligence from a digital perspective, but from a genetic perspective. And the logical way that you would do that, and it would be the easiest way, would be through DNA, turning DNA switches on and off, the genome switches on and off. So, you know, a lot of analysis of people who are very smart and check what the similarities are between those people, and then when you make a new life form, the directive that life form has is, look, you're gonna have everything paid for your whole life. You can choose to be free, or you can choose to work towards the betterment of mankind. If you do a lot of them, enough of them will want to dedicate their lives to this. So their whole job would be to do the same thing again. So let's say the smartest scientists in the world range between around about 170 to 220 IQ, right? Maximum 220. The goal would be create a human being, a genetically modified human being that would have an IQ of upwards of 220. Doesn't matter what level it is, just upwards of 220. And then the next human beings that come along in that when you apply education to them and teach them everything, so you apply their intelligence applied to knowledge, should allow them to then do the same thing again and maybe create people that have a 300 IQ, and then those ones do the same again. It's kind of like the Russian doll in reverse effect, you know. And eventually you should get to a stage where you have human beings with 600 or 1000 IQ, or using all of their brain power. So you're not even doing something where you've got to genetically create creatures that have a larger brain. You're doing it so that you can untap the potential that's already there in other creatures that already exist, you know. So a lot easier than that would be if you were having to, you know, genetically engineer, let's say for example a human being is a head twice the size and that had abilities that human beings have never had at any stage. You know what I mean? So we'd be kind of cheating in some ways, taking the easy path. We're not doing that, and it's outlawed. And the strange thing is, look, you've got to ask questions about the outlawing of this stuff, because you know that Americans would never ever let anyone get the edge. So why have all these countries, including countries that don't have religious fanatics, why are all these countries in agreement that we don't mess around with DNA? So the simple reality is, countries like China that don't have, they don't care about religion, they wouldn't. They would carry on doing it. And America couldn't fucking tell them what to do. America couldn't tell North Korea what to do. So the reality is, behind the scenes, not just are they doing it, America and the allied countries are doing it too. Because there's no fucking way they would let people have the jump on them. So genetic research is happening. Or the only way it wouldn't be happening is going back to the other hypothesis that all of our governments are in cahoots, and all they are is regional farm managers. That's all. Each government is just a manager of that region. For who? Don't know. Could be some kind of ruling elite, like I was mentioning before, the ones that haven't had their minds and bodies detuned, or it could be some kind of alien intelligence of some kind. Doesn't have to be a creature like us. Could be a non-physical entity. Could be something that just has absolute control. Could be something like a parasite that worms its way into the brain. We already know these things exist, and that's the thing that would drive me crazy. Is telling this to a normie, they'd be like, "Oh, it's a bit far-fetched." We know these things exist. We know the pistol shrimp has the ability to, eject an air bubble with 4,500 degrees Celsius from, we know there are creatures that can do fucking amazing things. We know that there are creatures that can change their color. There's another point actually with genetic modification. So whether it's turning certain switches in existing human beings to unlock potentials that are already there, that are already in the human body and human mind. There's also, with genetic modification, the ability to add things, like the eye of an eagle, where you get the centerpiece has got like a 100x zoom, There are so many things that we could add from different creatures. I came up with this idea when they cloned Dolly the sheep years ago. That's Edinburgh University in Scotland. Clone Dolly. Well, again, a lot of especially flat earthers, they don't believe in nuclear weapons, and they also don't believe that DNA research is possible or has happened. I kind of get really fucking annoyed dealing with that, because it's a very closed-minded way of thinking for a race of people who are completely fucking clueless to almost everything they themselves are about, let alone the things around us are about, to have such certainty in what is and what isn't. So I don't have time for that. I have as little time for that as I have for people who are completely engrossed in the WWF politics of the world and really think it's all true and it's really going on, and that it's not just an actor-based reality that we're living in. So there's how we transcend to a stage of, I'm not saying godliness, but transcend to a different level where if you imagine the conundrums of this world, like trying to, if global warming's true, which it more than likely is, but might not be, right? So I'm going to give flat earthers that one, because we do know there's lies that do happen on behalf of flat Earth and these agendas that are, people like Al Gore, who him and not Dick Cheney, is it Dick Cheney? I think it was Dick Cheney, were involved in Monsanto. I think I've got that wrong. It's not Dick Cheney. It was someone who was vying for the American presidency a few years back. Just again showing that Republicans and Democrats are the same fucking thing. They headed Monsanto, which just created Agent Orange and destroyed so much in this world. DDT, created in New Zealand, by the way, for the American government. Dropped all over Vietnam. Thank you very much, New Zealand. Clean, green New Zealand. The lie, same as the Norwegian lie about Norway's all clean and green. No, it's not. It's just it was run by businessmen for years. So it would make sense that if you wanted to get to a stage of really solving all of our problems, you would have to throw massive intelligence. There's no point getting AI when the human machine is already far beyond it. We can't create anything that even comes close to human intelligence. Simple as that. I mean, we can when it comes to applying to playing Go or something like that, or chess, but not general intelligence. Which is there's a cryptocurrency project headed by a guy called Ben Goertzel, called Singularity Net, and the terminology they use is artificial general intelligence, because they understand that artificial intelligence is pretty much a misnomer. Anyway, so you would solve these problems by genetic engineering. It's a fucking no-brainer. You think about all the money that these governments are putting into AI, digital AI. And already America's probably scared of, I mean, they wouldn't allow TikTok in America recently because they're scared of what the algorithm is doing, from a media point of view, not even from a defense point of view, just from a potential propaganda point of view. You know, one is they showed their hand, showing that because they allow Twitter and Facebook, that if that's what you're scared about, that's because that's what you're doing to your own population using the tools that you effectively own, which is Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, and any others that are based in America, right? So that is what they're doing. If that's what they fear, that's what they're up to, right? This is why Russia doesn't allow Facebook. Everyone uses vk.com over there, right? Or in China they use WeChat. So this is what all of our governments are up to. But then again, I still think that just like politics, where someone can win, you know, Hillary can lose and Donald Trump can win, it's only to make it seem more real. I think that the whole rivalry they have, countries like North Korea and all these sort of things. So Britain has issues with Russia, and I think they're all false as well. I just think they're all just different farmers in cahoots. They have an unhealthy rivalry with each other. Like, oh, you killed a few million more than I did. Oh, you beggar. Oh, wait till I get to your level. Oh, you know, Stalin and all that, or whoever else it was, or even America and the UK killed, you know, about 1 million in Iraq, another 1 million in Syria. You know, Libya, destroyed that country. Like, oh, you're really good. You crafty beggar, you. Oh, I can't wait till I'm at your level, says Britain to America, or vice versa, right? Or Russia, or whoever. So yeah, it's logical to me that they are working on DNA research. It's just you're not gonna. Yeah, no, we believe that, and because our people are really religious, and that, you know, if they were so fucking religious, they wouldn't kill millions of people. Don't pretend. Trump couldn't even recite one thing out the Bible. Give me a break. You know what I mean? And you know, as for Hillary and people like, you know, her lot of neoliberals that are just as bad as the neocons that Trump ousted. You know, don't tell me they've got any moral fiber behind them. Look at the stuff that the Mormon Church gets involved with, drug running and all sorts of stuff. You know what I mean? I know quite a lot of Mormons from New Zealand, and yeah, I mean, they'll, much like Jews, they'll do anything for a dollar. You know what I mean? To get money for their collective, and they don't care about others that are not them. You know what I mean? So I know that as a blanket statement. I've got Jewish friends that do care about other people. I'm just saying the people that control the power, the similar power structures, the power structures that we have, they don't give a fuck about anybody, especially people that aren't their own kind, right? So yeah, you know, it would make sense that they'd be enslaving these people, and it also makes sense that they'd be fiddling with their DNA. To make something that could serve them better, a better slave. This is also why I believe that human beings have been dumbed down with things like the Jeremy Kyle show if you're from the UK, or from with Jerry Springer and all this sort of stuff if you're from America, or you know, you've got similar shows all around the world. If you're someone who kind of watches propaganda from people like what's his name, Bill Mayer, or any of these political stooges that are serving the political parties, even the ones that are quite funny like John Oliver, who are just a shameless shill. Or that guy who pretends to be black from South Africa. Can't remember his name. He's fucking annoying. He's so shit at comedy. It's so unreal how bad he is. Can't remember his name. I had a thing on him quite a while ago. Trevor Noah. That's it. So if you understand that they are dumbing down populations, so socialism feeds into this. For example, giving people the more kids you're able to pump out. If you're the lower IQ you are and the more kids you're able to pump out, the more the government wants to give you a handout. Here in Slovenia, for example, if you're a gypsy who's gypsies here tend to work harder than other. They don't. Their towns aren't as scum as other parts of Europe, like Bulgaria, for example. They're a lot cleaner, but they still have a lot more issues. It's quite funny. I said to my girlfriend yesterday, "Oh, I wouldn't mind buying a house." She goes, "No," and I said, "I'm kidding," but it's so funny. It's just coded. No. Anyway, they are given, well, what she reckons about twice as much as the Slovenes are. And then I pointed out to her how this social engineering works in all countries. When a certain group is given something that others aren't given, like Maoris in New Zealand, for example, that's not because they fought for it. That's because the people in control are still the majority. So the majority in this country are still white Slovenians. So why did they give an exception to these gypsies? Well, because they demanded it. Well, no, because then if they demanded it, wouldn't they just give it to every person in the country? Why would it be an exception made to give them more? Wouldn't Slovenes complain? Well, they didn't complain to get more money. Yeah, but they also didn't complain that others were getting more money than them in their own country. It sounds to me that the same trick that they use all around the world was happening is divide and conquer. What you do is, if a government comes along in the UK and says, right, we're going to get rid of these Muslims right now, what would happen is, ha, you massive mosquito. What would happen is, you would, sorry, just doing a search. What would happen is people would rebel against the government and say, how dare you make us get rid of these people? So what you do is you make it seem like their idea. So in the UK, for example, Abu Hamza, all these Muslim clerics with their 12 kids living in a government-provided place that most Brits can't even get, given 3 times the money that Brits can get. That's to create racism and resentment and xenophobia and these kind of things, right? Don't be fooled by it. If you do find yourself being a racist, you are a fucking dumbass and you're not asking the right questions, right? Because I mean, I already said before, I don't mind the aspects of racism, like deciding to keep yourself, deciding to only go with people your own race, for example, right? Nothing wrong with that. Deciding that you are a racist, you say you're not going to be my friend, but I'm not against someone's right to be a racist. I just think you're a dumbass for being one. But if you were to want segregation, that's not necessarily racism, because it's not racism when people who are brown do it, for example. Like, it's not racism when someone who's Indian and Hindi decides they only want to have an Indian person, even though they don't necessarily have to be Hindi, you know. But that's not racist. It's only racist if you're white and you want to be with a white person, right? As we've seen over the last decade. This is done to I think assassinate basically destroy the culture. They're already diluting culture, but through multiculturalization of white countries, which apparently are the most racist, yet they're the most multicultural. Try figure that little paradigm of what's it called? That paradox out. You know how white people are the most multicultural, the most open to others, yet somehow the most racist. Anyway, I've gone on a little bit of a tangent there, but getting back to the intelligence thing, I think we've been bred to be dumber, and we can see this in our day and age by the socialism aspect, which does favour people to have many kids and do nothing but sit there and have their brains degrade. If you look at that in the mathematical perspective, what happens is you end up having, if you look at society as a pie chart, is woke people, or red-pilled people, and non-red-pilled people. That slice of red pill gets smaller and smaller and smaller because you're being outbred by dumber people on purpose. You know, you're effectively, not just that, you're paying to be outbred because it's your taxes that go back into feeding the not the enemy, but the facilitator of the system, which is basically killing you or killing your kind, you know. And this might go some ways to explaining why we also only use a small percentage of our brains. We've been told by scientists 10%, we've been told 1/3. The reality is we don't know because the brain's too complex to know. And we can make different areas in the brain fire. Maybe some parts of the brain don't fire with as much concentration. Maybe they are a duller electrical area. Maybe we are using all of our brain. I don't know. I don't think we can trust much what scientists really say in topics like this. 3333. Maybe I'll end the video here. No, I'm not going to. So, yeah, I'm just going to go until I get past the 33. It keeps on showing up on my face all the time. Yeah, so those are my hypotheses as why we're weak. I think we're bred this way or engineered this way. And I also think that the same thing that's been used against us can be the thing that's used to solve all of humanity's problems. And this is why no matter how bad things get in the world, let's say we get to the stage where twice as many things become extinct. This might be why the elite don't seem to give a fuck when we destroy things and even take species that are gone forever. This is why they might not mind. They know that they either have the intelligence to recreate those things, or there's only a matter of time before they can, if they put their minds to it, to create these beings, these tools. They would have unbounded intelligence to tap into, and you know, rejuvenate or bring back some of these things that we've lost. So that could explain why they don't give a fuck about destroying the oceans and everything. Just another theory there. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Yeah, give me your thoughts below on these topics that I've raised in here. Bye.